stand on the rights of animals in Pakistan that they legally have? Where do we stand right now, and what are you fighting for?
So right now, unfortunately, animals have kind of very bare-boned rights under Pakistani law. The law I spoke about, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1890, is pretty much our only anti-cruelty existing, our main anti-cruelty legislation. And because it's from 1890, it was enacted in a certain context, in the context of like working animals, horses. And so while it does cover all domestic and captive animals, it doesn't really afford them a whole lot of protection. And also the fines are super outdated under that law. It was revised by the Federation in 2018 to upgrade the fines, but those fines were also upgraded to the extent of the Federation and not to the provinces. And so then we have this kind of regime that doesn't really protect animals all that much, especially when we're talking about domestic animals, when we're talking about farmed animals, or when we're talking about our cats and dogs and pets. When it comes to wild animals, our wildlife laws are potentially, so they do afford more protection in the sense that they specifically they specifically state that their goal is to protect wild animals. And then also, for instance, in the context of hunting, our wildlife laws place certain restrictions on hunting, for instance, that ostensibly you could read as protecting wild animals, but are actually just putting in place certain rules of ethical hunting, right? And then a lot of the recent wildlife laws that Balochistan and KP, for instance, have enacted, and Sindh as well, actually specifically state that cruelty to wild animals is kind of prohibited under those laws. So then for wild animals, I would argue we then have more protection, especially because if you read those laws in conjunction with, say, the judgments that have been coming out of the high courts, for instance, the Kaman judgment, and then a couple of other litigation that's happening in the area has also been mostly around captive wild animals. And so wild animals, I would argue, have considerably more protection, legal protection, than, say, other sorts of animals.